So let's turn this to Jim Meier, if you would please. Jim, as I said, has got tremendous experience in the finance and marketing space. So Jim, you've got a great example here about decisions based on brand performance. Do you want to take everybody through that?
Yeah, just quickly, I want to comment, add a comment to Dave's excellent presentation. As you bring up that impact of margins. As many of you know, I come from the beer industry, and even if you look at the value chain within the beer industry, the brewers, as the owners of the brands, earn margins that dwarf those, for instance, of the independent distributors. Who are obviously playing a very necessary part in the whole value chain. But, that's just an example, again, of even within an industry, how the brand owner truly has the greater financial leverage and also very greater financial risk, you could argue. And so coming from MillerCoors specifically, where we have a significant portfolio of brands. I still say we, so I apologize, but I guess it never gets out of your blood. But at MillerCoors, as I think with any brand-centric company, you have brand profit and loss statements. And when you have those, it gives you the ability to develop an internal approach to computing the financial value of brands. It's likely going to be some sort of multi-year discounted cash flow approach. And that's what this illustration here is going to show. So this is really a hypothetical company that has 3 brands. All these dollars, by the way, are in millions. So in this particular case, we're dealing with brands A, B, and C. And let's say year 1 here is actually calendar year 2020. So the year that we're in. So if I have developed an approach to brand value that I'm using internally, and I'm doing it consistently and transparently, maybe around this time last year was when I put together these brand values for year 1. I'm doing this in advance. So it gives me some perspective and understanding on where I might want to allocate my resources. So again, let's say a year ago, I came up with brand values of 800 million for brand A, 560. And then as a result of that, and probably many other things, I came up with a resource allocation of spending 100 billion, 50, and 15, as you can see, for a total of 165 million. And let's say I'm executing that plan, and now here I am about a year later in August of 2020, and now I want to do some planning and strategy around what I do in year 2. So I go through the brand value methodology again, and that produces the brand values that you see here. So you can see brand A up slightly, brand B down slightly. Brand C, though, is showing a pretty significant growth from 60 million to 105 million. And let's say the constraint that's been placed on me is that at this point, I can only expect to spend $165 million again. So what I might do as a going in position is say, well, maybe brand A and B are in relatively stable segments, stable parts of the industry, and are more cash cow type brands. So I might want to moderate my spending there and put a little bit more behind brand C in year 2. And in fact, in this case, doubling that spending from 15 to 30. These brand values, when you go through and compute them, these are not just trophies you put on your shelf and then revisit a year later to see if the trophy got bigger or smaller. this sets up a practical example where, again, this notion of bringing, as Dave Stewart talked about, leveraging brands to bring value to the enterprise. You can take the position here that spending more on brand C makes a heck of a lot of sense. And if you go to the next slide, we're going to go into brand C a little bit further. And again, assuming you've done a proper discounted cash flow model, you can actually decompose the changes of brand value from a year ago to now, the 60 to the 105. And in this case, again, hypothetical, we're in a growing category. So as we've looked at our multi-year future, we've got more volume coming in from that. We're gaining share within that growing category. It seems as though we haven't bought that volume because our pricing is positive. We have some inflation and costs, and we're spending more in marketing over a period of time. I think this presents a great storytelling device for the C-suite. So why would a CFO, CMO, or CEO not be interested in this if they truly have at the core of their beliefs for the company that they have to increase enterprise value over the time? So I think while we pointed out correctly, there can be trepidation of the C-suite to want to get into this. I actually think there's a tremendous amount of value in all of those individuals doing their roles appropriately and doing it together. I kind of going to defer to the panel here to see if there are any other comments you'd like to make on this, or any questions you have around it. And of course, everybody else can engage in the Q&A later.
So one of the things that I'd like to say is, even if this has been a very simple and straightforward approach, it actually helps answer the question of why should I measure the brand value over time, right? Because if you see that brand value increasing, then that should be a factor in above and beyond the ROI modeling and other performance marketing measures. It becomes hey, if we grew this brand from 60 million to 105 million based on a certain level of spending, why wouldn't we put additional spending there, to use the overused phrase, to see how high is up, right? And especially, in a situation where you have multiple brands, I think all of us have experienced where the brand that the company is known for may even be the name of the company, and that gets much of the attention and much of the spending, and everybody wants to talk about growth, but the quote-unquote smaller brands who may have developed a program which has got great return, they may have difficulty getting their share of the entirety of the marketing pie, because as Jim has laid out here, we've essentially held total marketing spending flat year over year, because that often is the circumstance one faces. So,
and Tony, I would add, it might provoke the further conversation. Was our going in assumption at spending only 165 collectively enough? Maybe we ought to push that lever a little harder. And interestingly, this chart, again, directionally is exactly how a current brand is playing out in my old industry. And it's, you may be familiar with Truly Hard Seltzer, which is a Boston beer product. And interestingly, it's not a beer. And frankly, I think Boston Beer has been exceptionally clever over the past few years in transforming themselves into not just being a beer company. And I know they just released their quarterly results a week or two ago. And Truly Seltzer is exactly in this position of being in a growing segment. They are growing share. They're using syndicated data to state that. And they are spending into it. And it always provokes the conversation, okay, I understand directionally we should be spending more, but is it enough? Should it be even more? And then you dig into market research, and you might go into your mix models and say, okay, have we reached our capacity, say, on our national television buys? And so, again, I think it's just, it's great provocation to a lot of these very critical questions for an enterprise.